Our next panel is customer experience in the payer. Recent research has revealed that all healthcare stakeholders have work to do when it comes to improving the customer experience. This panel focuses on health plans' efforts to own the member experience, the key tenets of that experience, and opportunities to revamp various touch points and channels that members use to interface with plans, both large and small. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Gita Wilson, CTO at Elevance Health, and my neighbor, Risa Aaron, founder and CEO at Expert Patient. Also, please welcome back to the stage our moderator, Mark Iskowitz.
Just kind of set the stage here. I just want to give some brief bios of my two co-panelists here. Risa Aaron, as Steve Madden says, founder and CEO of Expert Patient. Before setting up Expert Patient, which is a support website empowering cancer patients to achieve the best treatment results possible, Risa spent more than a decade as a strategy and CX lead at a number of healthcare marketing agencies. And she leveraged that experience to launch Expert Patient 3 years ago this month. So happy anniversary.
Thank you.
In order to replicate that model and execute her vision on behalf of patients, she's also a caregiver for cancer on multiple fronts. So welcome, Risa.
Thank you very much.
Of course, Gita Wilson is Chief Technology Officer at Elevance Health. Gita has 20 years of experience implementing technology across the healthcare system with an emphasis on design and CX. Prior to Elevance, you were VP Consumer Experience Enterprise Transformation at Humana and Senior Director of Global CX at NCR Corp, where she focused on delivering best-in-class experiences embedding technology innovation. She's a Six Sigma black belt and has done research around CX and also worked on the agency side. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here, even if there's just a few of us now.
It's going to be a very intimate conversation. Hope you guys are ready.
We're going to whisper. So lean in. And I mention all of that because I want to just emphasize that their CX roots run very deep. Now, CX, just to set the stage a little bit more, can be very binary. We talked earlier about the need to create delight among HCP customers who are finding themselves answering late night, patient emails on their health system portal. That's kind of like, okay, provide the information, or you don't provide the information. You have a good CX, you don't have a CX. But there's kind of a higher level idea of CX, where patients, you never know what kind of state of mind, or HCPs, or sales reps are going to be coming to your portal, whatever it is, what kind of state of mind they're going to have. We talked earlier about patients not knowing if their health plan, for instance, covers an anti-obesity medication or not, and a positive CX could either help or hinder that. Patient. So with that, I thought we'd level set a little bit, find out from our two panelists, what is the current state of CX in health plans? Where are we now? What progress has been made? Risa, you want to start us off?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. I think from my perspective, what we've seen is there have been a lot of great strides. There are some great tools. There are a lot of resources. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of focus in this area. And it makes sense. I mean, there can be a lot of value brought to patients if done right. Unfortunately, when you think about it, what you remember about your health plan, and if you look at the sentiment analysis that's out there, you remember getting denied a claim. You remember the frustration because you're on the call for too long. So while there's been a lot of investment, the way that people feel about it, it's just not as positive as it could be, and it could ultimately be in the future. And one of the things that stood out for me, and I pulled up a piece of paper here because I have a statistic here, that the latest research shows that 65% of folks feel that their health insurer is not working in their best interest. And so there's a huge trust issue that really needs to be addressed, and there's definitely an opportunity to do that, but there's too much negativity out there that's outweighing the good work that's being done still today that we have to work towards. And thankfully, there's a lot of commitment around it, and Gita's going to talk more about that. But there's definitely an amazing opportunity that's there. We just have to all really work together to get there.
Yeah, Gita, what do you think?
And I would just couch that in the context of rising cost pressures and admin cost reduction and high complexity that there is to reduce it down, and then many functional silos and disparate systems that are surrounding that, right? So they exist, and I just want to, just so that it's not a negative Nelly story, there are things that we're making traction on, right? Like I remember just 4 years ago in 2020, we had very little, at Elevance Health, I manage our clinical systems and our contact centers and our provider systems. And I remember about 50,000 of these associates, whether they're service agents or whether they're clinicians. And, in 2020, we had about 1%, let's just say, on it being digital chat or digital conversational AI. To nearly, and I won't quote all the numbers, but like you've got at least 30% of our conversations and our 32 million calls we get every year significantly driven digitally. So what we're seeing in this rising cost structure and this, I think, myriad of functional diaspora that we have sometimes with the silos, that there are some gems happening that digitization has afforded us, right? And I think post-COVID, what it also did is accelerate some of those myths that perhaps we had of those who could be truly digitized. So I think couched with like all of what you've said, there's some complexity, there's some brokenness that continues to exist that we have to stitch together, but not looking at some of the strides that we've made. And I think today's context is post-COVID is, and post-Gen AI now that we have that here, is how fast are you going to go in healthcare compared to how fast you've been in prior years? And we've been able to be afforded to go slower a little bit, I think. So,
the functional diaspora, I like that, that phrase. Yeah, it's great. So great, that's a really nice setup for our next question. Now that we know where we are with the CX within health systems, I'd love to get your take on what brands have inspired you both, from a CX perspective. Geeta, you want to go first on that one?
Yeah, and probably these are to some of you. How many of you are travelers? Just get on a plane or get in an Uber or a Lyft, right? And so I'm going to pick on those two because I'll pick on Uber first and Lyft similarly. But Uber, let's start with there because they impacted industries that, it was complex, wasn't necessarily an avenue to see a structure like that exist and a business model like that exist before. And second, the connection by which you as a rider and the demand that you have is matched by supply in the context of geographies, in the context of availability, in the context of your schedules, and making that seamless. I always used to hate going and riding up for my taxi, then being dropped off at the hotel. Someone immediately opens that door, the car door, and you're rushing around and fumbling around to pay, right? And I no longer have that problem. Right? In terms of the end experience, I see that Uber has done something fantastic with a dynamic pricing structure, a dynamic routing optimization where they know they've created sophisticated algorithms where they know who to best provide at the right time to the right person in the context of their pricing. A complexity between supply and demand that I think is very much something to be admired in a very parallel organizational sort of construct where I've got a lot of regulatory context. So that's one. And the second one is, again, with traveling, is Delta Airlines. I remember that it was on me to find out when I would land, when I would get there, to communicate to my family, to if a flight got cancelled, to like jump in line or to call, and to make that really process. And I remember when I was working at NCR, and we were working with Delta Airlines, and we were just touching the ability to do self-service when you go into the airport. But now you expect that phone to manage and handle so much more, to where you actually gently notified, you might be boarding right now, you might be boarding, and they'll nudge you. So that science of nudging and making a painful experience, very abrasive experience that was in the past, very, I think, delightful. And I would see more delight where I can relax on the plane and watch the entertainment and then continue watch it on my phone once, if I didn't finish it all on the plane.
Yeah, it's really a nice point to have a functional technical problem solve more so than just that technical problem, but make you feel a feeling of delight. Like with the Uber, I don't have to fumble for my wallet anymore. Or, Delta making me feel at home when I'm far from home. That's really a great point. Risa, what brands inspire you?
It's funny, I used to talk about Starbucks a lot when I would sit down and talk. And the reason I would talk about Starbucks is because I used to work in the city. I'm not here every day anymore, but every time I'd get off the subway, I would order my coffee. And if I ordered it too soon, I would get a message from Starbucks saying, given where you are, basically my distance, they knew my distance, I was going to get to Starbucks and my coffee wasn't going to be at the optimal temperature. So I might want to wait a couple minutes. I just thought that was amazing. Like, wow, what a great integration. They knew where I was, what I ordered, what the optimal temperature was going to be. So that used to be my story. But I started really thinking about healthcare a little bit more and really what the essence is of where we want to go with this empathy. And I go back to American Express, which I worked on quite some time ago. American Express is insight-driven marketing. It's an insight-driven experience. And it's not just today. We talked about the 1920s earlier. I'm going to go back to the 20s. When the railroad first became the way of transportation, American Express was so pressed to make the best experience. They sent people, their own people, to every railroad station to make sure that stressful situation of coming into a new place, not knowing where your luggage is, not knowing where your ticketing is going to be, to make sure that those people knew, those people that had the card knew where to go, what to do. So they were thinking about the stress and the experience and anticipating that experience and taking care of it. And I feel like, from a health perspective, we talk about it, especially on the payer side, like we know what people are going through. We've had 1,000 members go through that. Why can't we help that next person, that next patient that gets that diagnosis? Because they're only hopefully getting it one time. So for me, that's really relevant because it's about emotion, it's about feeling, and it's about helping people manage through that. And that's an opportunity, I feel, for the insurers who have so much information, knowing where people are, diagnosis, treatment, tests coming up, scans, like there's all these things going on. There's only one organization that really knows all that besides the individual. That's the payer.
Sitting on a lot of data there, right? Yes.
Data.
Right. And we're going to get to that a little bit later. But also some really good examples there. Wow, they used to send a live agent to the train stations to make sure people got taken care of. That's really interesting. And so, we see the importance of good CX there. So thank you for sharing those brand examples. We're going to segue over to next question in terms of the evolution of the experience in plans, because I want to hear, it's not new. I know there's conferences that are completely built around CX, as a matter of fact, but love to hear, Geeta, from your perspective, how CX has evolved from perhaps being something transactional to taking experiences more seriously. And I know your remit includes both internal and external, so you kind of address that for us, please.
Yeah, so I think that's really innate, and it's good that we didn't rehearse this because where I'm going is very much in sync with what you've just said. If I think back, and I know a lot of conversations have been around omnichannel, meet members where they are, right? And so to me, that is table stakes. I don't get to debate that. I've got to meet members where they are in any channel, whether they come to our Sydney channel, whether they're on Google, or whether they're on talking to an associate. So there's the transactional level question. That has to be getting the basics right. It has to be just fundamentally there. Like, why did my claim get denied? Did it get denied? Right? It's all on you to find that out. And I think getting the basics right is, as a consumer, you're like, why do I have this additional liability? You have questions. And it's easy for me to say, I'm going to provide an answer to that question in the channel of your choice, also beyond what the channel is, where you might be. So there might be non-channel specific on Google search, as an example. The second part of it is getting what I think is orchestrating event-driven experiences. Now, that is what you were talking about earlier with a payer being able to have this information, being really not stitching together 500 different solutions and 500 different platforms, but thinking about, like, now, my platform, and paving the way for us to be fluid and fluent, but not necessarily clumsy. And so now I'm thinking intentionally about the event that you might have, and the surrounding things in your health that we need to consider. So now that's event-driven transactions. So I've been notified, for example, a prior auth. I can do something with that transactional to say I can trigger care planning and say, you know what, here's what to expect before and after surgery if you're going in for a prior or for knee surgery. That leads me to whole health orchestration and event-driven whole health experiences that go before transactional to really to more health engagement. And all I'll say is, in this, there's omni-channel, there's omniscient, where I'm starting to now to do precision engagement, where I'm trying to use nudge science, and we've started to use technology that Netflix does. In similar vein, to say, you know, how do I provide recommendations that are based upon your behaviors? And not necessarily having to ask you. And I've got data that I'm stitching together internally. Then I go to ambient edge, and ambient edge is really omnipresent, where now think about your lights turning on. You don't ask the light to turn on when you go into a room, right? You start to now have omnipresent, where it's not just the lights turn on, but I've orchestrated the specific fan, all of the different things in the rooms that have to come together, and not just the lights, right? So whether it's my Nest, or whether it's the warmth in the room, or whether it's the Alexa. So that orchestration of experiences is, the opportunity that we have today as we go forward.
I think everything you're saying, Geeta, really speaks to the importance of the payer kind of being at the center of a patient's healthcare, because if they can't get reimbursed for a particular treatment or test, you know, they're kind of stuck, you know,
Yes.
and it really makes life unpleasant. And I think during the pandemic, what you were saying about the old Amex example of sending the agent out, you know, it's funny how it comes back to, you know, the live person calling. You know, I got an orchestrated call from my Cigna, you know, agent, because I had a recent hospital episode. Everything's fine, but it meant so much just to get that live call. Sometimes it just comes down to the old traditional phone call. Is everything okay?
And it's very
Help out.
reactive to go into very
Right.
predictive and proactive, right? I think that's the opportunity that you start to stitch together with orchestrating those experiences. And we're doing that. I don't want to bore you, but I could tell you about some of the things that we're starting to do and have done over this last year, which would have been monotonous to say, like, I would have technology to say, put a telephony system in. Well, we weren't putting a telephony system in, we were putting a voice activation, something that would take voice and allow us to utilize it in the cloud to then do something with it. So now I'm using that same voice technology, building on top of it, and allowing clinicians to have a co-pilot that does some of the work for them while they're on the call.
Mm-hmm. Great. So utilizing technology in a human way, human-centric way.
That's right.
Risa, do you want to speak a little bit to the evolutionary aspect before we move on to the next bullet?
I mean, I think from my perspective, any health situation is complex. On expertpatient.com, I spend a lot of time talking to and working with cancer patients. And the reason we started there is because our vision was, if we can help them, you know, get to a better place, feel more empowered and more supported, that we can help any sort of disease area, if you will. But from our perspective, it's, you know, the customer experience has to be easy, right? Easy, it could be someone coming to the home, a phone call coming in. Health situations, any kind of crisis, it's complex enough. And so from a health plan, a health leadership perspective, I feel like the plans have that opportunity to help solve for a lot of that, those problems. I think we talked a lot earlier about empathetic. And I think, you know, there has to be that empathy. I spend so much time with patients, and they want to talk to somebody at the end of the day that gets them, that's been there, that's done that. I think some of the language we're using in the healthcare space isn't quite right. In fact, you know, personally, I was on the phone with someone, they called themselves a customer care representative. I asked them for some education information for something that I had, a condition, and they said, sorry, I have to send you to so-and-so, who I never heard from, nor did they send me information. So I think we need to be careful, because we're setting expectations that I'm going to get care where I'm truly still getting service on a lot of fronts. And I think as we evolve, we're going to get there, right? And I think the health plans can start to be more of the care solution, but I don't think like we're all there yet, even though we're using some of the language where, and from the patient
Care versus service.
Exactly. I don't think we're there. And as on the other end of that, as the patient and the caregiver, you know, it's not feeling quite right yet. Like, I think we're going to get there.
Yeah.
And the last piece and the other piece is just the connected piece, right? Like, I felt like I was going to get some great information to help me where I'm at. Thank God it wasn't urgent, right? But I never got anything. So you're setting the expectation that you're going to get something, and then to get nothing, is really concerning. And so I know that's not where, your team is at, but I think, across the board, we just need to make sure everyone is committed to that delivery of whatever they're committing to.
Sure. And that's a good segue to the last bullet point I want to touch on, and that's the future and opportunities for CX moving forward on the health plan side. Risa, let's just stay with you for a minute. Based on your experience as a patient caregiver, what else do you think plans and payers can do to sort of own that member experience in various touch points and/or channels, make better use of the data that they have, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I didn't start here. I started as an engagement strategy lead for brands on the brand side. But over the last couple of years, I've been really looking at the payer side because I think there's this amazing opportunity because nobody has all the data. We were looking at and talking about Lilly Direct earlier. When you go to Lilly Direct, you click on one condition. A lot of people have a lot of other stuff going on that they have to deal with. Who has that visibility? That's the payer. The payer has this amazing opportunity to become a true partner in health care and help with proactive care, proactive support, a proactive customer experience. Hey, I'm going to coin a new term here, right? We want to get to a proactive customer experience where we truly help patients and everybody get to better outcomes.
Sure. Geeta, what do you think about the future opportunities, in terms of where either Elevance, your shop, or the industry as a whole, where do you plan to spend in the next 12 months, in terms of maybe incorporating AI or ML, into different processes like eligibility, checking, segmentation, engagement with users, real-time sentiment analysis, any of those types of things?
Yeah, no, you just went ahead and started to look at my roadmap.
He wrapped it up.
So I do think, the tool for the tool's sake is not the answer. But like I said, you've got to do some of the foundational and getting the basics right. And getting the basics right allows us to make sure that we're accelerating. And I think the future is the time that we've had in the past in healthcare is not the time that you've got ahead of you. Now, we just released a report called Advancing Health Together report, where we helped providers provide them data to then help about a third, 26 million consumers. And you step back and you think, how did that happen? Right? And it's because we've been intentional about the places that matter to members and providers at the outset. And I think what we've got to do is think very quickly and get things fluid and fluent. And we've been, we haven't been waiting to get to this place. We've been actually driving some of the functional things that we used to do by domain and saying, how do we look end to end? How do we think about this as a consumer journey so that a consumer won't have to, or a provider journey? And we do have lots of data that we can start to stitch together to orchestrate those. And I think we don't have a lot of time ahead of ourselves in the industry to make sure that we're getting it closer to how we talked about some of those inspiring brands.
Sure.
And closer to what people want to see and interact with every day, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think during the pandemic, I know people don't necessarily want to talk about the pandemic that much anymore, but there was that moment where pharmacies kind of, where they had the open appointment scheduling to get your vaccine, and people got a little bit excited about that. Wow, I'm getting a text, to tell me where there's an open vaccine when there was a scarcity at first, and we were worried about equity, of inoculations and so on and so forth. I think ultimately that left, the experience may have left something to be desired, but that was one instance where people sort of saw some glimmers of hope. Are there an example that you also might point to, Geeta, in terms of where you feel like you've moved the needle, really measurably, whether it's using text technology or some consumer-facing technology from a member perspective?
I'll say two things. We started on Clinician Copilot before Gen AI. And, there was technology that allowed us to utilize AI and ML based upon the voice platforms that I was putting in place. So clinicians, think about health risk assessments. It's normally that they would have to do that work, and they would have some, after-call, pre-call work that they would have to get prepared for. If I started to provide that automatically to clinicians, and say, hey, you don't have to hunt for this information. You don't have to click for it anywhere. You'll have it served up. If you want to utilize it in the conversation, you can. And by the way, these are the questions get asked and answered on the health risk assessment. I'll capture those answers as those are, or the system will capture those answers as you're conversing, so you can spend time engaging as a clinician. And I think, that might have seen a big frontier years past, but it's not. Mm-hmm. And I feel just very privileged to be in technology to work on these things. And we started to work on those 2 years ago, and we've activated it and scaled it across our clinician base. We've scaled it with voice AI across our customer service base. Right? And so is there more to do with now getting a little bit more fine-tuned with providing not just the answers, but places where they can send that information on to the members as well. They could start orchestrating the next best action along with that. So I think, simplifying and making it easy inside of the house to then ensure that whether it's a consumer or provider, they don't feel burdened to have to ask the question exhaustively, every question, to get to an answer that we have now equipped clinicians and customer service agents to have.
Great, very good example. Risa, just one final question in terms of where do you see pharma brands kind of fitting into this new world? Because there's probably some people from the pharma world in the audience here. Kind of speak to that, and we'll kind of finish up with that point.
Yeah, I think that when we start to talk about being proactive and helping people understand, not just their diagnosis, but also their treatment, and then, of course, the actual specific brands that they're taking. There's a collaboration with the pharma brands to make sure, right, they've done all the studies, they've figured out how to help people manage their side effects, that, they're part of the solution, too. They help provide that type of information, so we're ensuring patients have the best results possible, right? We want to see them make it through therapy. A lot of times there are challenging side effects, and we want to collaborate with all the right people. I think someone said, health is it's a group effort. Good healthcare is it's a group effort. And I think it's going to take everybody to get there.
Sure. Oftentimes there seems to be, a need for, getting everybody on the same page, especially, pharma vis-a-vis payers vis-a-vis pharma. Sometimes, there's tension in the system in terms of the drug supply chain not being as transparent as we would like, and rebates, built in and things like that. And but to the extent that we can, I think, link, as Geeta was saying, that functional diaspora, we can make the customer experience better for all stakeholders and have a better future for healthcare. So I want to thank you so much to both my panelists for elucidating this very important topic.
Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.